At 14 minutes past 9 in the morning, the USS Abraham Lincoln receives word that Iran has submitted a new peace proposal through Pakistan. The message reaches the Combat Information Center at the exact moment Petty Officer 2nd Class David Osei is staring at a contact on his passive sonar display that has been moving in a perfectly straight line at a perfectly steady 4 knots for 6 hours and 11 minutes and has not deviated once. Not once. The proposal is the story of the morning. Every comment circuit is carrying pieces of the news. Pakistan playing mediator, a fresh framework submitted overnight, Washington studying the terms. The crew that has been at war for 62 days is doing what any crew does when peace suddenly feels within reach. They are listening. They are letting themselves have a sliver of hope. They are paying close attention to exactly the thing Iran wants them paying attention to. The contact on Osei's display is now 2 1/10 miles from the Abraham Lincoln's hull. Iran launched it 72 hours ago. Not a missile, not a submarine. An unmanned underwater drone. Electric motor, no crew, no biological noise, no mechanical signature beyond a low-frequency hum, so faint it sits right on the seam between contact and background. Moving at 4 knots in a straight line toward a position Iran had calculated from 62 days of watching the Abraham Lincoln's patrol pattern. A weapon that did not need to be fast because it was never meant to be found. It was meant to arrive. It has been in the water for 72 hours. It has slipped through every passive sonar sweep run by every ship in the formation across 3 days of continuous operations. It has been logged and dismissed and relogged and redismissed by automated classification systems built to hunt submarines, not built to catch something that sounds like almost nothing moving in a straight line at the speed of a slow walk. Osei filed his first report at 3 minutes past 3 in the morning. Contact bearing 031, moving at 4.1 knots, straight track, no deviation, duration of observation at time of filing 3 hours and 14 minutes. The response came back at 41 minutes past 3, consistent with large marine biologics, whale shark or similar. No further action required. Osei looked at the response. Then he looked at the contact. Then he kept watching. Because whale sharks do not hold 4.1 knots on bearing 031 for 3 hours and 14 minutes without a single deviation. And whale sharks do not travel in perfectly straight lines. And whale sharks do not hold perfectly consistent speeds. And nothing biological does what this contact was doing and had been doing since before midnight. He filed his second report at 17 minutes past 6 with 6 hours and 11 minutes of tracking data attached. Same contact, same bearing, same speed. Still no deviation, still closing. Now 2 1/10 miles from the Abraham Lincoln's hull. The response came back at 44 minutes past 6. Biologics assessment maintained. Contact not exhibiting threatening behavior. No further action required at this time. Osei closed the report window. He kept watching. The contact was now 1 8/10 of a mile from the hull. In the Combat Information Center, the morning watch was carrying 2 conversations at once. The peace proposal and the routine contact picture. The proposal was the bigger one. Washington reviewing new Iranian terms through Pakistani intermediaries. The blockade possibly lifting. 62 days of war possibly approaching something that looked like an ending. The watch officers were professionals and they kept the ship running and they did not let the news pull them off their duties. But the duties felt different this morning. Lighter. The way duties feel when the thing you have been bracing for might be nearly done. The contact on Osei's display was now 1 6/10 of a mile from the hull. Still straight, still 4 knots, still nothing. Since 3 minutes past 3 in the morning, Osei had been doing something besides watching the contact. He had been listening to it. His passive sensors could not classify it. The acoustic signature was too small, too consistent, too unlike anything in the system's library. But small and consistent meant learnable. Every minute of data he collected sharpened his picture of what the motor sounded like. The specific low-frequency hum of an electric drive running at exactly this speed. The specific interval between the hum's cycles. The specific way it bounced off the thermocline layer at 40 meters depth. 6 hours and 44 minutes of listening to something nobody else was listening to. He knew what this contact sounded like better than anyone alive. At 22 minutes past 7, the contact reached 1 4/10 of a mile. At 9 minutes past 8, it reached 8/10 of a mile. 8/10 of a mile is inside the minimum engagement range of every torpedo countermeasure the formation carries. The countermeasures were built for threats detected at distance, contacts picked up at 2 miles or more with time to deploy and geometry to work. At 8/10 of a mile, the countermeasure deployment geometry is marginal. Not impossible, marginal. The difference between marginal and impossible depends entirely on how much time the formation has to work the problem. The formation did not know the problem existed. Osei picked up the circuit at 11 minutes past 8. Contact on bearing 031 is now at 8/10 of a mile, he said. I have 9 hours and 8 minutes of continuous straight-track data at consistent speed on consistent bearing, moving directly toward the formation. This contact has not deviated once in 9 hours and 8 minutes. It is not biological. I am requesting immediate reclassification and response authorization. Tactical Action Officer Lieutenant Commander Rachel Webb looked at the contact on the passive sonar feed. 8/10 of a mile, straight track. The biologics assessment sitting in the file from 44 minutes past 6. She pulled the 6 hours of tracking data Osei had attached to his second report, looked at it for 11 seconds. Then she looked at the contact's current position. Then she picked up the circuit to Rear Admiral Carver. The contact at 8/10 of a mile was reclassified as a possible threat at 13 minutes past 8. By 13 minutes past 8, it was 7/10 of a mile from the hull. At 4 knots, that was 10 minutes and 30 seconds from impact. The helicopters were 7 minutes away at maximum speed. The escorts were repositioning. Every torpedo countermeasure was deploying at the marginal geometry that 7/10 of a mile allowed. Not ideal, not clean. The best the formation could do with the time it had and the position the contact had already reached before anyone was hunting for it. On the intelligence circuit, the peace proposal update arrived at 16 minutes past 8. Washington had responded to Iran's framework. Talks were progressing. The Pakistanis were optimistic. The contact was at 6/10 of a mile. The first countermeasure package deployed at 17 minutes past 8. Acoustic decoys designed to lure an incoming contact away from the hull by mimicking the Abraham Lincoln's acoustic signature. They entered the water and began broadcasting. The drone's guidance system was not designed to chase acoustic signatures. It was designed to follow a pre-programmed coordinate. The decoys found nothing to lure. The contact continued on bearing 031 at 4 knots, 5/10 of a mile. The second countermeasure package at 19 minutes past 8. Same result. The drone did not know the decoys existed. It was following coordinates that had been loaded into its guidance computer 72 hours ago on a coastline 340 kilometers to the north. It would follow those coordinates until it ran out of water to move through, or a torpedo found it. 4/10 of a mile. The first helicopter reached the contact's position at 21 minutes past 8 and dropped its torpedo directly in the drone's projected path. A shot calculated to lay the torpedo's acquisition cone across the straight track the contact had been holding for 9 hours and 22 minutes. The torpedo entered the water and acquired the contact in 3 1/10 seconds. It turned onto an intercept heading and closed. The drone executed a programmed evasion maneuver at 3/10 of a mile. A single 90-degree turn built into its guidance architecture for exactly this scenario. a terminal evasion designed to break the geometry of an intercept torpedo at close range. The torpedo followed the turn, but the geometry at 0.3 of a mile made a clean intercept impossible. The torpedo passed 44 meters behind the drone as it completed its turn and resumed its approach on a slightly adjusted bearing to its original target coordinates. Miss. The drone was at 0.2 of a mile. The helicopter had no second torpedo loaded. The escorts were too far. The countermeasures had failed. The evasion had worked. 0.1 of a mile. Rear Admiral Carver picked up the all-hands circuit. "All hands, brace for impact," Osei transmitted at that moment. Not a weapon solution. He had no weapons. What he transmitted was the acoustic profile he had been building since 3 in the morning. The complete frequency signature of the drone's electric motor at 4 knots. The exact hum, the exact cycle interval, the exact thermal layer reflection pattern. 9 hours and 23 minutes of passive collection distilled into a targeting filter. A filter that told the second helicopter's sonar exactly what frequency to listen for and exactly what it would sound like when it found it. Cutting through every layer of acoustic clutter between the surface and a contact at 0.1 of a mile in a way raw passive sonar could not do without it. The second helicopter had been orbiting since 8 with a torpedo loaded and no clean acoustic solution on a contact too small and too quiet to acquire reliably at close range. With Osei's profile, it acquired in 1 1/10 seconds. The torpedo entered the water at 8. The drone's evasion maneuver had been programmed for a single use. It had already fired at 0.3 of a mile. Its guidance computer had no second maneuver. It was still on its adjusted bearing to the target coordinates when the torpedo found it 220 meters from the Abraham Lincoln's hull. The warhead detonated underwater at 8. Not against the hull, 220 meters from it. An underwater detonation at that range does not sink a carrier, it reaches one. The pressure wave from a warhead detonating in water travels outward in every direction and hits every hull inside its range at the same instant. The Abraham Lincoln's hull, the escorts, everything in the water, feeling it in the same moment, with an intensity that decreases with distance but does not vanish at 220 meters. The Abraham Lincoln shuddered along her entire length. Equipment failed in 4 compartments from the shock. Systems that had been running without a break for 62 days and had never been designed for an underwater pressure wave at this range, losing power at the same instant as the flex traveled through the whole framing. 8 crew members went down, not from a blast, but from being thrown off their feet by the ship moving beneath them in a way a ship is not supposed to move. 2 were serious. Nothing penetrated the hull. Every compartment held. The Abraham Lincoln was damaged. The Abraham Lincoln was operational. In the sonar suite, Osei wrote the contact log entry. Detection at 3 First report filed at 3 Second report filed at 6 Reclassification authorized at 8 Contact destroyed at 23:09 Total track duration from first detection to destruction, 9 hours and 26 minutes. Distance at first detection, 2 8/10 miles. Distance at destruction, 220 meters. He did not write anything after that. The log said everything. The launch position, the point on the Iranian coastline where the drone had entered the water 72 hours earlier, tracked by passive signals analysis from the moment the drone's guidance computer had transmitted its final pre-launch position update, received 8 cruise missiles at 8. The coastal facility that had built and launched the drone ceased to exist at 9. the research facility 140 kilometers inland, where Iran's unmanned underwater drone program had been developed over 4 years, identified from technical signals analysis gathered during the 9 hours and 26 minutes Osei had been passively listening to the drone's motor, received 8 more cruise missiles at the same time. It ceased to exist at 17 minutes and 44 seconds past 9. Iran had submitted its peace proposal through Pakistan at 6 in the morning. The drone had been in the water for 66 hours when that proposal was transmitted. It was not covered for the launch. The launch had already happened 3 days earlier. The proposal was designed for the final hours of the approach. Something for every command circuit to carry. Something to keep the formation's attention on the thing Iran wanted them focused on, while a weapon that had been crawling through the water for 72 hours closed the last miles. It came within 220 meters of working. It failed because a petty officer second class noticed at 3 minutes past 3 in the morning that something moving in a perfectly straight line at a perfectly consistent speed for 3 hours and 14 minutes did not behave like anything alive, and then spent the next 9 hours and 20 minutes listening to it so carefully that when the moment came, he could hand the helicopter sonar the exact frequency it needed to find a contact too small and too quiet to find any other way. Anyone who has ever worked a night shift knows that feeling. The feeling of raising your hand about something that looks small on the screen and being told, politely, that you are overthinking it. Most of the time you are. You go back to your coffee and your monitor and you tell yourself the system knows what the system is doing. But every now and then, the thing on the screen is not a whale. Every now and then, the quiet voice that keeps saying this does not look right is the only voice in the room that matters. And you want